Krisserin.
Hi, Kelton. Happy Pen Pals Day.
Oh my gosh, happy Pen Pals Day. I was going to tell you that you can still hear the beans being ground downstairs for more coffee.
Oh, can't hear it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, that's the kind of day it is. Bean grinding day.
Bean grinding day. I feel like every day is bean grinding day. Just grinding day.
I'm Krisserin Canary.
And I'm Kelton Wright.
Follow our quest to publish our first novels.
From first drafts to query letters,
through inevitable rejection,
and hopefully eventual success.
from California
to Colorado. This is Pen Pals. I have to tell you, today is not a grinding day for me because last night was the last session of the winter practice of the Rewilding. So I am done with class for a little while.
I feel like we haven't talked about your class very much since you started it. I can't believe it's over already.
I did it for a month this time instead of a month and a half. And, it'll be interesting to see what the participants thought, how that felt to them. But to me, it felt tidy and nice. And I really enjoyed it.
That's wonderful.
Can you guys Rasputin in the basement while I do the podcast? Yeah, we're recording.
It's okay. We're just warming up.
Yeah, we are just warming up.
But you're launching a new class. You've got a new thing coming. I saw it in your newsletter.
Oh, gosh. Well, so I am launching something called the Murmuration. And the Murmuration is free. So it's a monthly writing practice focused on the seasons and return to self and like integrating in a seasonal practice. And so that'll launch on March 19th and then will loosely correspond to seasonal happenings throughout the year. So you can go to keltonwright.com/murmuration to join that. I'm excited to host something that's, like community, organic, like flowing and doesn't have a lot of pressure on it other than like connectivity and like writing practice. So that'll be really fun. And then I'm also working on the spring practice for the Rewilding.
So you are doing a spring practice for the Rewilding.
So what I've decided is to make it self-guided. Instead of hosting class, I'm going to have a much lower price point so that anybody can take the spring version. I'm framing it as a spring almanac, like a guide to self-renewal. I also put out the call for a co-founder. So I put out the call for a co-founder. I have a Notion link on my Substack posts right now looking for a co-founder for this project. I need to share the lift of this. So that's out there.
You got a lot done this last
I got a lot
week.
done. But let's talk about, none of those were part of my goals, though.
True. But your
goal
was to read a book, I think, right?
It was, yes. And I read 2.5 books.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was really awesome. I read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, the first in the Southern Reach series.
Big book?
No, it's tiny.
No? Oh, never mind then. I'm not impressed.
Yeah, no, it's tiny. It's so tiny. But then I did read a big book. I read Uprooted by Naomi Novik, which is like 440 pages.
Okay.
So I breezed through that, and now I am in the middle of Amanda Holden's How to Be a Rich Old Lady, which is a finance book.
Amanda Holden. That's not the woman that's on... No, I'm thinking of Amanda France, the one that's on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
No, it's not her.
God, you couldn't catch me dead reading a finance book. Ever.
Yeah, I have read a lot of finance books, and almost all of them are by men. And so when I saw this one it was popping up a lot of places on Substack of other writers. I like reading it. And I was like, I want to support women in finance, obviously. So I wanted to read this book. And I will say the tone is not for me personally. It's a little too fun. It's a little too wacky for what I wanted to get out of it, but I understand that approach. I think it can be very welcoming, I think, to a broader audience, whereas I'm just kind of like, let's get to the nuts and bolts here. But I'm halfway through and I'm interested to see what she gets into later in the later chapters. But I did it. I did my goals. That was my goal. Didn't touch my proposal, didn't think about it.
Thinking about my second book, I haven't looked at it at all, and I'm really enjoying not working on it right now. I think the more distance, you don't want to spend years away from a project, but I think like the more distance at this point for me, the better, because I feel like when I go back to it, I'm going to have way more clarity than if I were to jump back in right away. I'm still too close to it. So I get that. I think taking time away from projects is a really important part of the process.
Especially if you're not like a Kevin Wilson who just like goes and writes it over 2 weeks. It's like, I need to step away from it to be like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what was I thinking here? This is not good. Delete, delete, delete. That's great though. Remind me of my goals for last week. I don't remember what they were. I will say, I finished a couple books, but I also started writing a new project that I'm having a lot of fun doing. I woke up on Saturday morning just kind of inspired to start plugging away at something, and I'm just having fun, and it's been nice to use my writing brain again. And so I feel like in that respect, it was a very successful week for me because it's been a while. And I like that it's not the book that I'm on submission with right now, because I feel like I have to push that aside for a bit. But yeah, I had a good week other than, just being very busy with life. I did get to, I think, 2,400 words.
That's awesome. Can you tell us anything about it?
No. I'll tell you later. I'll tell you later when we're not recording because it's embarrassing.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, but I will say for our listeners who watch this on YouTube, I've got my beautiful flowers that Kelton sent me this week. They're absolutely gorgeous. It's a tropical arrangement of orchids and ginger and bamboo. It's just really pretty. And she sent to me for going on submission, which is so nice. I almost started crying when they came to the house. I was like, who's sending me flowers? I'm not on submission yet. We're getting really close, but the original deadline was the 24th, but we're still working on it. So they're very inspiring to look at, just to remind myself that even though we're in this in-between time, it's still happening. So thank you, Kelton, for that.
Of course. I know I love getting flowers. You can't get them delivered here. So what a gift to be able to just go online and be like, let me pick out some flowers for my friend.
Yeah. Well, you picked great ones. And it really reminded me that you need writing friends. You absolutely need writing friends, because my husband wasn't going to do that for me. He doesn't even know what going on submission means, And Mark Sarvis did say you've got to celebrate all the little milestones. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Kelton. It was very sweet.
My pleasure. My genuine pleasure.
You getting a coffee delivery?
I'm getting a coffee delivery.
See, that's
you don't want to be on the YouTube?
On the YouTubes.
You could wave when you go down the stairs.
There he goes. How is your sleep going?
It's getting a little better. It's slowly improving over time. And the toddler is, he's just like, he's such a great little dude. Yeah. It's nice. It's nice to have such a good little dude. He's super cute.
So cute.
The books are getting better and better that I get to read to him. And so that's really satisfying. I do feel very compelled to write an extremely rhyming children's book.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of waiting for the inspiration of what the topic is.
Yeah.
But obviously it'll be like something ecosystem related.
Of course. I really still think Kate Flanders needs to write that Year of Less for Kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would buy the shit out of that book.
It would be really magical.
Absolutely. I have some really good kids' books. I'm going to send you some. There's a Japanese author that I love, and it's really hard to get their books in the United States translated.
Yeah.
But they deal with really kind of like heavier topics. One of them is about grandpa dying and what's going to happen in the afterlife and all the things that he could choose for himself. It's really well done. And there's one where this little girl's older brother comes home and just gives her existential dread. And so it's her unpacking her existential dread with her grandmother about, there's got to be more to life than this. It's really intense, but they handle it in such a interesting way. I love it. And so I feel like kids' books here don't deal with those topics, like death of your grandparent and the world ending and how awful everything is.
Yeah, that's not very like American.
No, not at all.
The last book we got in the mail was Buffalo Fluffalo. So
That's a cute book. Is that from
it's cute.
that literati subscription?
No, that's from the Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
Okay.
If any readers have children and don't know about that, from the time of birth to the age 5, you can sign up to get free books every month from her Imagination Library. Dolly Parton, amazing.
God, I just want to be Dolly Parton when I grow up, honestly.
Who doesn't?
God, she's fantastic. In a world of Melania's, be a Dolly.
Absolutely. Oh my God. All right. Well, we have kind of an awesome guest on today. We've been talking a lot about big deals on the last few podcasts, and we got someone who got an awesome deal. And I cannot wait to talk to her about it. Today, we're having Rachel Hochhauser on the podcast. She's a writer, and she's the co-founder of Piecework, a cult favorite puzzle brand that also sells other like curious goods. She's raised in Santa Barbara. She studied at New York University and earned her master's in fiction from the University of Southern California. She now lives in Portland, Oregon with her husband and 2 daughters. And her debut novel, Lady Tremaine, is out now. And I read this book, Krisserin, and I devoured it. It really caught me off guard, and I can't wait to tell the readers about it and to talk to Rachel.
All right. Well, without further ado, here she is. Well, we're so excited to have you on the podcast, Rachel. Kelton has prepared a lot of incredible questions for you. She read your whole book. She loved it.
It was easy to read.
Oh, thank you.
That was a speed read for me. It was kind of like, while the toddler's playing underfoot. I'm like, uh-huh.
That's an impressive talent if you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the kids. It's like you got to commit to reading no matter what kind of toy they're asking you to engage with.
Yeah, I use my Kindle for that. It's like if I can squeeze in one page.
That's the best. All right,
Yeah.
well, we got to talk about your book. Lady Tremaine was amazing. So I haven't told the readers just yet what it was about, but it's a reimagining of Cinderella from the vantage point of the so-called evil stepmother. First of all, I loved this book because as a kid, I thought Cinderella was useless. I found her to be just like the most boring princess, accomplishing nothing without the help of her mice and her godmothers. So I want to know what drew you to the inner life of this pretty flat character in the movie, and what was the moment where you were like, I want to tell her story?
Kelton, first of all, I think that's to your credit that you felt that way as a child, because I absolutely didn't. I was enthralled with Cinderella. I was one of the kids that needed to watch it many times over. At least the Disney version of it. And it was only later as an adult and now as the mother of 2 young girls that I've really started to question it and its core message, which I metabolize now as if you're really beautiful and really nice and a little passive, you might be lucky enough to be picked by Prince for your happy ending. So I think for obvious reasons that, is ripe for a redo. But the way in through the so-called evil stepmother it came to me in kind of a light bulb moment. And I was in the hospital of all places, actually, when I thought of it. Not myself, I was in a waiting room, but in 2023, my husband had a series of really bad health events. He had an abscess in his brain. He had to have emergency brain surgery. And it was a many months long, very grueling recovery. And so we were spending a lot of time in the hospital, and I was spending a lot of time scrolling on my phone, as one does in those spaces. And one of these times I came across a depiction of Cinderella's evil stepmother. And for whatever reason, this time I just paused on it and felt very arrested by the image. And I think in hindsight, it was because I was in this season of sacrifice myself where I was effectively single parenting a toddler. I was caretaking, for someone that I loved that really wasn't doing well. I was still attempting to work full time, holding all the pieces together. And from that viewpoint, I couldn't help but look at this so-called villain and say, this isn't someone that's actually motivated. Villains are motivated by harming people. And this was just a woman motivated by taking care of her daughters and making sure that they were secure and got a leg up. And there's something so interesting about that, because that's the message of motherhood in our society, is that you're supposed to take care of your children, and you're a bad mother if you don't take care of your children. And I thought that was so interesting. So in that moment, the idea came to me, and, I started writing. My husband, thankfully, is doing so much better. And as soon as our life was kind of back on rails enough, I started working on the book.
Well, one, I'm so glad to hear he's better. It's also nice that, like, in him getting better, there was a magical moment of creative spark. What a great way to reframe the experience of having to have been in the hospital, that not only does your husband get to come home, but you get to write this incredible book out of it.
Yeah, definitely a silver lining.
This book circles motherhood a lot, but it also does such a good job of reminding the reader that there's life beyond that, both for better and for worse. What were you hoping to capture anything specific about motherhood when you were writing it?
So many things. I don't think it was as intentional as I had a really clear message, more that it just is very reflective of my own thoughts and feelings and experience, which is a tapestry of things. But I think, you see in her character the struggle between being a good mother and what that means. And sometimes being a good mother means being a bad person in this particular story, which I thought was really interesting. Or maybe, and sometimes being a good woman in this story is maybe not being true to yourself. And I think teasing out all of those inherent conflicts of what the world tells us to be as a woman and a mother versus what's true and authentic to ourselves is really something, I'm personally quite interested in.
Was there ever a moment when you were writing the daughters where you were like, I actually haven't figured this lesson out yet? Because the daughters in the book, they're at the age where they're interested in marrying the prince, of course.
Yes.
That's the story of Cinderella. And your daughters are much younger than that. So was there a point writing teenagers where you were like, not sure about this?
It's interesting that you asked that, because my experience of parenting is with really young girls so far. And that was one area where I was kind of in my head about what would it be like to parent young women, because I haven't had that experience myself. So it required some imagination, and, who's to say that I got it right? I don't know that I have, but I also imagine people are very different. So parenting different, children is going to feel very different for different people.
We were all teenage daughters.
Yes, yeah. I love Cinderella myself still. Like the book is not just a dismantling of its core narrative. It's also somewhat of an ode to what I do love about fairy tales. And I think there's still a part of me that does take in those initial messages and isn't totally willing to let go of them for better or worse. So I think it was, for that reason, easy to put myself into, a slightly younger mindset for these, late teen girls. And we're all at different stages of our journey of understanding how we want to metabolize and either internalize or spit out what the world tells us to be.
Totally. And speaking of that, did you do a deep dive into all the various tellings of Cinderella? I mean, I'm familiar like you are with the Disney version and a little bit with the original fairy tale, but there's so many versions of Cinderella. So what was your research process like for filling it out?
Yeah, there are so many. There's more than 500 versions. It dates back. The earliest recorded version is the story of Rhodopis from ancient Greece. So Cinderella in and of itself is a retelling, right? Like, I'm not sure we even know what the initial version really is, but I really focused on the Western European versions of it, the Charles Perrault Cendrillon, Brothers Grimm, because they inform the animated versions, which inform sort of our current, at least U.S. cultural consciousness around the story and the messages that we intake. So, but ironically, those older versions are actually quite short. So, researching them, you can read them very easily in just a handful of minutes. So a lot of my research was focused more on the realities of life for women a few hundred years ago in Western Europe, because I really wanted the book to feel like historical fiction. I thought it was really interesting to think about if this were a true story, what would it have looked like? The book is not fantasy in that it has a lot of magic. The change and transformation comes from grit and sacrifice and agency learned by the characters. So for that reason, I focused the research more on, there's a falconry storyline. I'm not a falconer. I had to learn all about what falconry looked like, in the late 1700s, early 1800s. I was researching food and dress and architecture and cleanliness. People couldn't. I wanted the grit of what life was actually like back then to really make itself felt in the pages.
It's funny because you do still incorporate the elements that were magical from the Disney version into this book. And I found your translation of them to be so charming and like such a nice homage to the movie and like such a great way to see the story from a different angle. Did you ever explore making it more magical, like literally?
I didn't, because that wasn't the story I wanted to write from the beginning. I really did want to make this feel rooted in a woman's experience. And I think it's also just the type of writer I am. I never thought I'd be writing things that feel like historical fiction. A lot of my writing up until working on this book was contemporary. So it might have been that was too much of a bridge for me to overcome, but just a personal choice.
Well, I think the readers will find the magic elements like little Easter eggs in this book because I certainly did. I was like, oh, I see what she did there.
I enjoyed that a lot. I think, and I've heard that feedback quite a bit. Like, I think as the plot of Lady Tremaine takes little like pirouettes or turns inside of the structure, we think we know that it can be kind of satisfying going through and finding those, plot points and how we've reinterpreted them.
So tell me, we want to know the path to publication. You got this idea in a waiting room. Take us to present day.
Okay, well, we actually have to go back further in time to when I was younger. I really wanted to be a writer from a fairly early age, but that didn't translate into a ton of actual words on the page or word count. I minored in creative writing in undergrad. I went to NYU because you couldn't major in it. So that was that was the best I got. Then I went to, not directly after, but a couple years after graduating, I went back to school to get a master's in fiction because in my mind, I was having a really hard time fitting writing in around having a full-time job. And I just thought, if I'm really going to prioritize this, I want to go to school and give myself the opportunity to not just learn, but to focus and kind of put my money where my mouth is. Although in hindsight, again, I could have just been writing more. It's like we all have these narratives we tell ourselves at different points in time. But I did use that time in grad school to write a book. And then I went out into like the querying trenches and was unsuccessful. I came close in a few places. I got some really wonderful feedback. And so then I went into years of revisions and more rounds of querying, and it got to the point where the book was so overworked, and it was almost like a breakup at the end. It was like a relationship you had tried so hard to make work and it just wasn't, and accepting that it wasn't going to happen it was sort of like a heartbreak for me, and I had to totally step away from writing for a while. I mean, I did other things. I had other means of creativity in my life and creative pursuits that I put that energy elsewhere. So when I sat down to write Lady Tremaine, it wasn't just this cathartic thing of, what had happened with my husband. It was also this like return to self and a dream I had for me. And I wrote it really quickly. It was like the polar opposite experience of the first book that I'd labored over for years. I think I wrote the first draft in 7-ish months. So I just got it out. I took a leave of absence from my work at the time, so that I could treat it like a full-time job. I took it really seriously. And then when I went back to query again, I was cold querying, but I went back to some of the agents I had talked to over a decade before. And one of them, my agent now, loved the book, and I was lucky enough to have a few offers of representation, but I couldn't not work with her because she had given me such a thoughtful rejection. It's like she clearly really engaged with the first book and given me notes on it, and the relationship had started so much earlier that it just felt natural to go with her. And then I like to joke this is my Cinderella story or my version of a happy ending because it's all been pretty smooth selling. A book sold on a preempt, and it sold to St. Martin's Press, who's been so wonderful to me. They've been a great landing spot for Lady Tremaine, and I have only positive things to say about working with them.
I have a question about that because I talked to my agent about preempts
Yeah.
and how they work. So your agent, did they have in mind like, oh, I think that this editor is going to love this book, and that is why you went to that editor at St. Martin's Press?
So when you get a preempt, they still go wide to all editors. I mean, that they think will love the book, right? So they create the list that they're going to send it to, and they kind of have an opportunity to either create the auction, or if one of those editors feels strongly enough that they're going to make a preempt, then they do. If you get two editors that you think will make a preempt, then you're back to having an auction. So it did go out to a list of I don't know how many editors. It's just that Sarah Canson, my editor, was, got to me, and we had our meeting, and I was like, she's great. She totally understands what we're trying to do. And it just felt like an intuitive fit.
I'd love to hear about the process of working with Sarah and how collaborative it was and how much work you did on Lady Tremaine after they bought the book.
Yeah, I think it was an unusual experience because there wasn't a ton of changes that went into the manuscript. Unlike I'm working on my second book now, and it's been a very different process. It's sophomore books are famous for being a different beast. But you get an editor letter essentially, and it goes into maybe the more macro things to change and things that you might want to discuss or think about. And then you also get a manuscript with line level notes and edits and comments. I got that back and I made my changes. It was fairly quick because thankfully, there wasn't a ton to do. And then you have a couple what they call passes where you can make changes, and they're very clear. There's the first pass you can make changes like to, sentence structure, or if you want to rewrite something. But you start getting into these passes where they don't want the word count to change at all. And so you're really just reading through for mistakes. You're not responsible for your own copy editing, but you're looking for, things that maybe are grammatically correct but don't work for you for whatever reason. And then we had some discussions. We had some, I ended up changing the name of a character to just things like that. And then you get into copy editing, which was actually really interesting for me because I hadn't worked with not having published a book before. I was surprised at the skill of a copy editor. It's so in depth. I would always sort of envisioned it as grammar, but it's so much more than that. It's really pressure testing that you're saying what you mean to say everywhere, that everything feels accurate. It's also like a fact checker. So that part really surprised me. It's a different type of editing. It's at a line level, but it is an editing partnership. And so that was kind of a delightful discovery.
That sounds really
fun
nice.
to be a copy editor and get like a deep dive on medieval falconry.
And it's exactly that. I mean, the copy editor was not a falconer, but they had done a ton of research to confirm that my word, I was using a lot of antiquated word choices around falconry. So I not only researched falconry, but I researched antique falconry, for lack of better words, and they use different tools and equipment. So you really get into some niche specifics when you're looking at, is this the right word? Should this be plural here instead? How did they talk about this weird piece that ties to the bird's foot 300 years ago?
And you
really
do that
cool.
throughout the book too, beyond falconry. I had to pause and look up a number of words. I don't read a lot of historical fiction. It's not really my favorite genre, though you are changing my mind. But there were a lot of times where I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
So I liked that because it immerses you in like place and time where you're like, I'm really in this, and they're using the right words. I find that really compelling. I loved that about the book.
Thank you. I think that's just a reflection of me geeking out. I really loved learning the words. I had lists of them that I liked, and if I could use one, I was really excited. There's great, fantastic ones that I didn't get to use that I should probably find a different place to put them because they're so fantastical.
Let's talk about So, well, I wanted to
I
ask
was going
about
to ask
this.
really the second book I want to ask about.
That's what I want to ask about. I want to ask about the
Yeah.
second book, especially because when we're on Publishers Marketplace and we're reading
Mhm.
about the deals that we're getting, and it's like a 2-book deal. And I have
Mhm.
to be honest, up until this moment, my brain had just automatically been like, a 2-book deal means a duology. And I wanted to check with you, is that the case here? Is there like a sequel coming, or is it just that they are like, we want whatever you write next?
So the second book, and most people do have that question, is it a sequel? It's not a sequel. I wish I had an idea for a sequel. I don't at this point in time, but it would be so fun to spend more time with those characters. My take on the 2-book deal, and my constant joke is I'm an intern in this industry. I spent so long focused on the writing, and then after the book deal, you suddenly go from writer to author, and you are, as a debut, learning a new industry. You're learning publishing. And I have enjoyed, my eyes have been open to how little I knew about the whole industry. I find it great fun, but they are different skill sets to, market a book and position it in a marketplace versus writing the book itself. So my take or understanding of a 2-book deal is it's a business decision where a publisher can essentially get a deal on the second book if the first book might do well, right? Then if you have a first book that does really well, and you don't have a 2-book deal, your second book can demand a far greater advance in the marketplace. So as far as how my agent explained it to me early on in the process, it can also go the other way, right? You could only want a 1-book deal as an author. It also means you're writing on contract for your second book, which depending on what type of writer you are, that might be a good thing, or that might really stress you out and you might not feel like you have the time to get to the place you want with the second book. So there's a lot of factors that go into it that aren't actually about like the book idea or the writing itself. For me, it worked really great because I was just like, I have a job to do. I'm going to, get my butt back into my chair at my desk and keep writing, when I probably would have twiddled my thumbs for quite some time otherwise.
Did you submit the idea for the second book, or was it just like a blanket, when you write a second book, we want it?
You do submit an idea, and it has to be signed off on. I think, but it was not submitted for the contract. It was more before I kicked off writing it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So are you still working full time now, though? Because you have this puzzle company that you run. So how's that working? Did you take time? Are you going to take time off the same way you did with Lady Tremaine?
So my professional background was in branding and marketing, and I had my own creative agency that I had founded with a few other women, and I was doing that when I was writing Lady Tremaine. I started Piecework, the puzzle company, in 2019, so my professional life was kind of split between the two of those, and I took time off of the marketing, branding world, but always kept doing piecework through writing. So it was never a full-time thing. After getting my book deal, I decided to step away from branding and marketing. I still do piecework, and then I also write. So I would say that it's kind of, my time is 50-50, but that's not an accurate reflection of any given week. It's like, that's how I would look at the year, but some months are big writing months, and sometimes I was in New York for a trade show a few weeks ago. My whole week was piecework. So it goes back and forth.
And you do have the time to like really have a writing routine. What does that look like for you? How do you protect that time?
Because I have 2 kids, it has to be childcare hours. So I have limited work hours, and I am not always perfect at this or anything close to it, but my writing comes best in the morning. So it's trying to move all meetings to the afternoon and just carve out a few hours. I mean, even that's a lot. I think I heard another writer say once, you pick 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours if you're insane, and you just try and do that every day until you have a book finished. And that has stuck in my mind. So when I'm in one of those phases and really beating myself up, I have picked 2 hours. I'm just like, I'm just going to work on this for 2 hours. I need 2 hours without disturbance. And I would be lying if I didn't say that it didn't feel like pulling teeth a lot of the time, but you do incrementally move forward.
This is how Krisserin has coached me as well. I also work in content and branding, and Krisserin has just been like, take the first 30 minutes for yourself. Don't let the clients take it. Take those first 30 minutes.
It's client services is really hard. I really struggled with that for years, to balance that with branding, because you want to check your emails first thing. There's always fires to put out. There's always disturbances or something that you can just handle with one 45-second email, but it disturbs your flow, your focus. It's something I'm not good about. I wish I was better. I wish I could just shut the door and turn off notifications. But I think also being a parent, you feel like you have to be constantly available and reachable. And, there's a lot of things. So I don't want to pretend to have it figured out. It's just, I just keep trying. It's the only thing I do.
Especially you guys both have really young kids, and that is
Yeah.
harder. My kids are a little bit more autonomous.
Oh,
They're
I'm looking
older.
forward to the day. I mean, I love my children are adorable, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But I kind of fantasize about the day when I'm like, they're home and they don't need me. They're home and I can read a book. Like that day
Yeah.
will come one day.
I will say, though, 4 is my favorite age.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
They're
really sweet.
pretty
Yeah.
precocious. Yeah.
I would love to hear about your writing community. So obviously you got your master's from USC. Who are your writing friends? How do you interact with them? How do they support you? A big part of what Kelton and I do here is support each other in our writing goals. And it's been hugely helpful for both of us over the last year because we have someone who's like, did you do what you said you were going to do last week? But I'd love to hear about your writing community.
Yeah, I would say that's a community I'm not finished building. I went to grad school and I had a few people that I was pretty close with and I had what you're talking about, but our lives kind of shifted over time. Some of us aren't writing anymore. One person is still, she's a working author and she's just been really helpful as a point of contact to ask questions more about the industry and less about the writing itself. For the writing itself, I tend to not share pages with a ton of people. I find more having a really trusted, limited set of voices, but that are willing to go deep with you is most valuable because otherwise, I tried some workshop routes and things like that, and you just end up with different opinions. Editing is just a personal exercise. So I have one of my closest friends. Her name is Jen. She lives here in Portland with me, and I lucked. I feel like I won the friend lottery with her because not only is she a wonderful friend, she's a voracious reader, and she's so astute. And she's a developmental editor in her free time. She's really wonderful. So if anyone needs a developmental editor, I'll shout her out. But like I said, it's a friend lottery because I feel like I get a personal and a professional opinion in one. And she was my first reader for Lady Tremaine, and I value her expertise. And then another fun part of publishing is I've gotten to meet so many other writers, other debuts, the people that you meet kind of when you're out chilling your book in different places. And so my community is growing and that's been really nice too. But I don't have the traditional writers group, that I think some people have, which would probably be a nice thing to have, but it's just it probably has something to do with me leaving writing for a little while dramatically quitting. So I'm starting again, so to speak.
You do have some amazing blurbs on your book. Are
Thank
some of
you.
those your friends? We got to talk about Glennon Doyle on the cover of your book. I was just like, God damn. That's amazing.
That was so I got to work on a project. So via my creative agency, we worked with Glennon on a couple of projects. And so I had a hand in helping with her latest book, We Can Do Hard Things, and edit supported with some content strategy and editing support. So I was already working with her and I had that personal contact. And the thing that I'll say about her is, she has this wonderful public persona, and I think a lot of times with people that are well known that you have the private person and the public person, but for her they match. Like she's just as wonderful and generous as she comes off.
That's awesome. Speaking of building a community, we talked a little about Krisserin and I cruising publishers marketplace. Does it feel vulnerable to have your very big deal be so public? It's like a finance declaration. And I had never really thought about that until I was getting closer and closer to seeking an agent and having a book. But now when I read them, I'm like, gosh, it feels like we're learning a lot about these people.
Yeah, it's really strange. I guess the comparison is like when you buy a house, people can go on Zillow or Redfin and see what you spent for it now.
My God, totally.
So it is kind of strange that that's part of the announcement, but I always find myself wanting to explain, which it's not fair because book deals, I don't think there are incredible, incredible, wonderful books that sell for like $2,000. It's not a meritocracy, and it's reflective of things that are not always related to the manuscript itself. But then I also feel like, which is maybe I hope I don't put my foot in my mouth in saying this, I always feel the need to explain that, the money is never exactly what it seems. It's like so much is taken out for taxes and then goes to agent, but then it's spread out. My deal's spread out over a period of probably 6 to 7 years. I still do have to work. It's not this, it's an incredible golden ticket, but it's not, a lifelong cure all. It made me feel great about investing my time, leaving my branding and marketing work and saying, I'm really going to take this seriously as a career, which is what I've always wanted to do. I want to write as an author and I want to have many books. So I felt like it was a great, wonderful stake in the ground for saying that's what I'm going to do and believing in myself.
We've talked about that a lot, that it's essentially like trying to make writing an actual career. And so when we look at those advances, you're thinking about them as like the money that goes to the agent and to your publicity team and to taxes and how it's spread out in those increments. And that when a lot of the deals that you see, the way that they're built is to barely function as a regular salary.
No, they're not salaries. And that's why, I know working writers who have 6 deals going at once. There's a lot of just really interesting ways to cobble together a living as a working writer. And I'm continuing to learn more about it. I don't have 6 deals. That sounds like a lot of deals.
Say though, your experience of having stepped away is so relatable because I think I went through the same process. I queried a book so long ago and learned a ton about writing and agents and how that all worked. I didn't obviously get an agent from that first book. And then when I was going through it the second time with the book that I'm currently going on submission with, I went through the same thing where I queried 70 agents and it was so demoralizing. But it is really a Cinderella story that you got to where you are now and not giving up and continuing to do the work and investing in your writing. It's like a true testament to just, if you just keep your head down and write the shit out of a book, you can get there.
But I also had to learn a really valuable lesson that took me years to learn, which is with my first book, I was like, this is the book. If the world doesn't see it, then it's not meant to be. And so much of the biggest lesson that I've learned is so much of writing is editing and listening to feedback. And I think I just wasn't seeing my own work clearly enough, and I wasn't willing to make changes or scrap it and start something new. It took me some time to get there. I have a really different relationship with the writing itself now. And if someone came to me and said, we got to scrap, the whole second act or whatever it was, I'd be like, okay, I guess I got to roll my sleeves up. Versus 10 years ago, I would have been like, but what if we, changed it from first person to third? It's like, how do we solve this?
Do you think some of that flexibility comes from having been an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I also learned about salesmanship more. I think I've now written so many presentations that I think I learned something about like narrative and flow and just the creative process and feedback. And, you can get really insulated in your own head. And, it's funny because I also was saying earlier, you can't have too many editors. It's like you learn that not all feedback is right and also that you have to take feedback. It's so what conflicting things to manage. But so maybe the bigger thing is your intuition, knowing when you need to listen to your intuition versus when you're just being stubborn.
Did you have some moments of that? I was curious it sounded like your process was pretty smooth, but were there moments when you had to defend a creative choice of yours?
No, but there was one, thankfully, my editor and I have been so in sync, and that's been wonderful. But I did early on with my agent, there was some concern with the book that maybe it needed more of a romance storyline. There is romance in the book, but that needed to, be pushed more to fit market tastes or, and I just felt really strongly that that's not what the book was, that the book is actually kind of taking a stand against that and against making happy endings go hand in hand with romance. I think the book is not against happy endings or against romance. It's just saying that I wanted to expand the fairy tale ending to be more about personal agency, and that can look like a lot of different things. So I told my agent, I was like, I don't think that's something I want to be flexible on. But that was more of a preemptive concern versus coming from a specific editor.
That's so interesting because I don't want to give anything away about the book, but for me, there was like the right amount of romance.
That's how I felt. Yeah.
And it balances such like a strong character who has an agenda. And I think it speaks to the fact that like romance isn't always the number one agenda for everybody. And so it's there, but like she's such a powerful character that like you get that like part of the book, but that's not her end goal. I'm so interested hearing that perspective from you just because it felt like it had the perfect amount of romance to me.
Well, I felt the same way too, and it was really intentional and it felt right to me. So that would be an example of something I would fight to keep as is. It's very carefully calibrated. It has enough romance because I didn't want to say I'm exploding the traditional, happy ending and it can't have romance, because I think some people's happy endings do have romance. It's just that I wanted it, again, as I said before, to expand a bit. And I think it does that really nicely. The ending feels really balanced to me.
Yeah, I thought it was great. 10 out of 10. I'm recommending this book, people. I think you should read it.
Thank you.
This episode's going to come out on the 2nd, and the book is getting published on the 3rd. So if you're listening to this podcast on Monday, March 2nd, go buy the book.
Yeah,
it's available.
Please buy the book. Yeah.
There is a lot in this book about class, about respectability, about like marriage as currency. Obviously, that's still really current. Unfortunately, how much of your personal perspective was shaping the narrative? And did a lot of that come out of having daughters?
It's been interesting in hindsight and in rereading and in interviews to see how on the nose the book is, because I thought I was being more subtle than I actually was. I think the book is very much a reflection of my own worldview and viewpoint, and less about having daughters maybe than just being a woman in the world. When I started writing it, I only had one daughter and she was, under 2. So I am still crafting and I hope I will continue to in perpetuity, but crafting my view of being a mother and how to raise women in a world that treats women as it does.
Yeah, I mean, having a son who like just came out of the womb, such a son. We never bought anything with dinosaurs or trucks or anything. And the first time he saw a propane truck, he was just lost his little mind. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. Thinking about him going to be a man in the world, I'm so like, this is your ecosystem. These are animals. This is how it works. Everything is tender and kind. And I'm like just hammering it into his head. And we had really hoped for a girl. Sorry, kid. We were like ready to raise like an Olympic athlete out in the mountains. And like the balance of the scales on those trying to get to a better equilibrium in society, I feel that I have swung my pendulum on my kids so much. So, thinking about Lady Tremaine in the book trying to tend to the way that those 3 daughters see the world is so fascinating, especially like her relationship with the Cinderella character. I am kind of curious like how you went about developing that, because that part is so complex and human, and you really do a good job with Cinderella herself, I thought, in the end.
Thank you. Cinderella was a really fun character for me because so I call Lady Tremaine an untelling versus a retelling, because I think it's both a story from a different perspective, but it also is a redo of the entire fairy tale narrative. And I wanted with Cinderella to have a different point of view on who she was, but that didn't mean taking her from good to bad in my mind. I think instead I wanted to take the traits we associate with the traditional Cinderella character to the max. So what happens when you take passivity, because she is quite passive. She literally a fairy godmother is the one that gets her to the ball. She doesn't get herself there. And when you take that to the extreme, that becomes passive aggression. And when you take niceness, you know, someone is so nice, they become inauthentic when they can't be anything but nice. And so that felt inauthentic and annoying. And she's become a symbol for all the same traits that we know her for. But I wanted to do that in a way that kind of illustrated that those traits are actually not the best ones to value in a young woman.
Yeah. Well, she grows out of it.
Yeah, she has a fun character arc. Yes.
Yeah, very much.
Curious if you're watching the season of Bridgerton.
I'm not. It's getting brought up a lot for obvious reasons because it's Cinderella based, which I didn't know. You know, I had no way of knowing that in advance. So
No.
the timing is pretty funny.
It's perfect timing because the new episodes are coming out today and your book comes out next week. And there is a pretty dynamic stepmother character that I think that they're going to give good color to. I think they're going to make her a little bit more rounded of a character too. So it's like kismetic timing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I need to watch it. I've watched season 1 of Bridgerton. It's a very fun show. So I need to catch myself up before I get to this season. And probably I tend to I don't want it to color my I don't want my wires to get crossed. So I think I'll probably wait till Lady Tremaine's been out in the world for a month or two and then dive in.
Yeah,
Speaking of that,
it's not as like dynamic as what you've done for sure.
and yours is also quite cinematic. I'm curious if there's talk of optioning on your end and what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say and what I'm not, but I can share that there's, you know, movement there, and I would love for it to be on screen. It certainly was in my mind when I was writing. It's actually a helpful writing tool for me to envision a scene, what it would look like if it was filmed, because it can give me material I wouldn't have otherwise.
So both Kelton and I come from like a marketing and content background, as you do as well. And I'm wondering, in the publicity of this book, have you been able to benefit from that background and how it's informed how you're going out into the world? I'm sure you have a lot of support, I'm sure, from St. Martin's Press, but I'm just curious if your background has helped at all, because we're hoping it will help us.
I think so. I mean, I think even a book that is very well supported by its publisher, which I'm lucky to say mine is, I'm still surprised to the extent to which you're kind of on your own as an author. You really have to think of yourself as a small business. I mean, you don't have to, but I think if you're trying to set your book up for success, anything you can do is helpful, and you're kind of the one at the steering wheel and feeding gas into the engine simultaneously. So I feel really grateful to have that background. I don't have the background of being, I would say, an influencer, or, you know, self-promotion doesn't come as easily to me, which is maybe something, I don't think it's a mandatory these days, but it's something I need to work on a bit more.
So what is next? Now that the book is out, when this comes out tomorrow, what are your days going to look like for launch?
I have a fun little book tour. It's nicely spread out over the next 6-ish weeks. So it's not like being at the airport every day for, a week and a half, which is good. I'm launching at Powell's, which is a fantastic bookstore here in Portland. And I have an event later in the week in New York at P&T Knitwear. They're both, would love for anyone in those cities to come join. And the following week, I'm at Warwick's in San Diego, and then the tour continues. I'll be at Santa Barbara. I have Los Angeles and Waco, Texas, and Indianapolis. So I'll get to go around and meet some readers, which will be really fun. And then I got to get back to working on the book too. Get that squared away.
That's so exciting. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited for people to read this book. I do think that, the big bet they made on it is an accurate one, and that has to feel so exciting.
Thank you. I mean, we'll see. This had been something I wanted for so many years and something I let go of. So there's been parts of me that, don't believe that it's real until it happens. But I'm finally kind of letting myself enjoy it all a bit. And it's been really nice.
Yeah. I mean, you're out of the tower. You get your fairy tale now.
Yeah, this is my fairy tale. I mean, I'm already married. I have kids. Like I know marriage isn't a fairy tale. No offense to my husband. He's wonderful and I love our family life. But
Listen, you don't have to tell us.
but this is something I've wanted, and it hopefully has like a long tail life and that I get to keep doing it.
Kelton likes to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it this time, which are like, what are the 3 books that you can't stop thinking about or that are on your nightstand right now?
I'm embarrassed to say this because it's such a cliche, but the book that has impacted me the most as a writer and a reader is Pride and Prejudice, because I read it, at 14, and I think it just sowed the early seeds of wanting, but I think both my perspective on romance, for better or worse, but also my relationship with books and narrative. So that one feels really just formative for me.
It's also a story that gets told again and again. Like ever since Jane Austen wrote it, like we get so many adaptations of it. And I was reading an argument online where someone saw the teaser for the latest Pride and Prejudice and they were like, ugh, this just feels like 2005 all over again. And someone else was like quoting someone saying, good and good is good. So
yeah, I'm gonna be watching that for sure.
For sure.
I actually, so in researching this book, I went to Bath, England, and I didn't intend it, but I ended up there.
Did you go to her house?
I went to her house, but I also happened to be there the weekend of the Jane Austen Festival, which I had no idea was a thing. And so there were women in like period dress all over the city. Like, you'd be like at your lunch, having your tea or whatever, and there'd be someone in a bonnet and a long dress next to you having their tea. And I was like, this could not be more delightful that this just happened to me in this circumstance. So that was really fun. So I'll say Pride and Prejudice, and then I cycle through books. I don't think I have ones that I've returned to again and again and again over the years. In my earlier writing life, Salter's Light Years was something I read a bajillion times, and it really impacted that first book. I had a grad school professor put it in my hands, and I was like, this is it. I still think that one's in the canon. And maybe something I've read recently that I really loved. Well, I'll say really formative book for Lady Tremaine was Helen Macdonald's H is for Hawk, which it's a memoir. It's exquisitely written. It's so beautiful. It's about grief and it's about falconry, but it also was research for me. It brought the sport to life for me in a way that I couldn't have imagined without having read it. Despite having watched so many YouTube videos, I took a falconry class. I was reading manuals, but that I owe Helen Macdonald a debt, because I don't think that whole storyline would be what it is without having experienced it through her eyes.
I read that in your acknowledgments, and it tied together like a lot of pieces for the book, because your book is also a lot about grief, and especially a caregiver's march through that grief, and like what you have to continue to do and to give, even though so much has been taken from you. And I thought it was just rendered really beautifully. I mean, it was writing about grief. Like, was that on the top of your mind when you started this?
No, it wasn't. Well, maybe let me reframe that. I think there were two things. One, I was in a period of grief when the idea came to me, and it's what enabled me to see the character with new eyes. And I think I was able to recognize this is a single parent who has lost 2 partners that has 3 children under her care. So I think even if on the nose, and I wasn't trying to say something about grief, the story is inherently about moving through loss.
And finding a hottie along the way.
Yeah, here.
Love when my life is colored by hawks and hotties,
I haven't. That's a great pitch. Hawks and Hotties. That's the
Oh my
bumper
gosh.
sticker.
That's going to be the name of my next rom-com. Well, this has been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
I want everybody to read this. So please tell them, where can they find you? Where can they support this book?
Yeah, the book can be anywhere that you buy your books. It's in the indie bookshop, bookshop.org. If you are more comfortable with the bigger stores, it's there too. You can follow me on Instagram at Hochhauser is my last name. It's hard to spell. It has triple consonants in the middle. And you can follow along my puzzle stuff, piecework puzzles. My website's rachelhochhauser.com, and I have the babiest of baby Substacks. It's called Great Fanfare. I just started it mostly as a way to keep in touch with readers, not because I'm setting off to compete with the wonderful Substacks that are already out there.
Well, I'll link to it on my Substack, and we'll drive the Shangri-Lagers over your way.
Thank you.
Well, we're so excited to have you on. It was a pleasure to meet you. Hope to have you in our writing community and to follow your great success on the next book. I can't wait.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to see what you both do with your writing. I think it's so interesting how you're sharing the journey in the way that you are. And I listened to the first episode of the podcast a few weeks ago, and it's just how fun that you're making an act that people can kind of partake in.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Rachel.
All right. Well, now I guess I have to get to work again. There's nothing like talking to someone who's like, oh, I have a business and a family and a upcoming like best-selling novel to be like, all right, time to get back in gear.
Jeez. And we think we're working hard. That's incredible. Well, what are we going to do to get back to work in the next week, Kelton? What are our goals, or what are your goals?
I feel like I'm just like, I'm percolating, Mm-hmm. I feel I'm in the pan. I'm sizzling. I don't know yet. I don't know where this bacon's going. It's tough because I know that I should get back onto the proposal and start dialing that in. But I have to be honest with you, like, I genuinely don't want to. I really want to work on the novel and, like, maybe allowing myself, like, one more week of stepping away from the proposal is good, just to really let the back of my mind think through what is and isn't working. The longer I've been considering that one agent's feedback, the more I'm like, she has all the points. So I need to come to terms with doing that amount of work. And I need to come to those terms when I'm not like, I need to fall in love again a little with the proposal. Right now I'm a little mad at it for letting myself down. So I need a little more space from it, I think, if I'm being honest. If I start working on it again right now, I'll just kind of claw my eyes out. So I am going to spend this week working on the novel. That's my goal. Do I need a more specific goal?
No, I think that's a great goal. And I was going to suggest it when you were like, I was like, we should go work on the novel, because that sounds like a fun break from the hard work. And it's what I'm doing right now. So I'm like, you know, let's do the thing that we're not supposed to be doing together, because it's more fun. And writing's supposed to be fun. And honestly, working on this project has it's been so fun, and it's reminded me like, oh yeah, this is why I like to write. Mm-hmm. Not all of this other hard work, which comes later too. You get motivated to do that other work eventually. But I do want to say, I listened to last week's episode in the car. I don't often re-listen to them because I have to edit them. So it takes, I have to re-listen to the whole episode while I'm editing it. And I was like, damn, I was like really laying into Kelton last week about not feeling so bad about what happened. And at some point I was like, all right, Krisserin, that's enough. Like, leave her alone. You were so patient with me, because I could just tell you were like, Krisserin, I have to process this the way that I'm going to process it. Like, let's move on. So thank you for that.
I think that's one thing I like about our friendship, is that you can be like, well, listen, bitch, this is what you said a year ago. And I can be like, I don't care.
Oh man. Well, I am excited for my goal. Yeah, my goal is to keep working on my little project, and keep it to myself and just enjoy it. And I'm really excited to do it. It's just been so fun. And I'm like actually writing from multiple POVs. And one of the POVs is 12-year-old preteen girl that's in middle school. So, and that's really fun because I feel like I haven't written a character that age before.
Yeah.
And it was making me think about the conversation we had with Kate last week and how great middle grade fiction is. And this is the book I'm working on is a romance novel, but it has a lot of dynamic relationships with the mother and the daughter, and then moving back home with her older parents and going back to a middle school that was a little traumatic. And so I'm just having fun. So that's my goal for next week, is just to keep working on this project and enjoy writing.
FOFF. Fuck around and find fun.
Yeah, I love that.
We're flossing.
Title for the episode.
All right, happy writing, you lunatics. You know where to find us. Official penpalspod@gmail.com. Penpalspod on all the platforms. You know where our writing is. It's also in the show notes. Write to us about literally anything. That is what we're here for.
We'd love to hear from you. I hope you all have a great week of writing and join us in our goal. Fuck around and have fun writing this week.
Bye.
All right, bye.